So welcome back to the Leadership Detectives. Thanks for tuning in today. We've got a golden nugget program for you today. We're going to try and help answer one of those tough questions that is perplexing boards and business owners around the world. How do you manage millennials? How do you keep millennials in your business? How do you integrate them? How do you grow them? These are the leaders of the future for your businesses. So how do you make them feel part of it? How do you get the most out of them? So we're going to learn from two lovely ladies today, Rebecca and Saskia, who are in their mid-20s, early in their career, who are going to help us understand more about what motivates and drives millennials. We're going to learn about some of the key things that they need to stay in the workplace, the key things they need to do better jobs, the key things they need to feel like you're investing in them so they invest in your business. Please subscribe to this channel. I hope you're finding these useful. Please leave us your comments, especially millennials watching this. Leave us your comments if you agree with this or you want to add something to this conversation. If your leader's handling this kind of problem, please leave us your comments if this has been helpful. Please give us a thumbs up. Please subscribe. We hope you enjoy it. Let's get straight in. 3, 2, 1, and we're live.
Oh, good stuff. Good to see you guys. Welcome back to Leadership Detectives. This is the first time, actually, I'm going to say good evening. I know you guys really don't care because you're watching it whenever you're watching it. But for the first time, Neil and I are actually working in the evening today, and you'll understand why shortly. So thank you for your support, guys. We've been getting comments, we're getting feedback. It's really useful stuff. Please keep it coming. We could do with a few more subscriptions, but we'll come back to that topic.
Yeah,
Neil, welcome. Good to see you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, mate. Very good indeed. I'm delighted to be joined by two lovely ladies this evening. So Rebecca, who's my daughter, and great to have you here, Rebecca, and one of her best friends, and someone I've known for probably more than 10 years, is Saskia. So welcome, ladies. How you doing?
Good. I was going to say that goes the anonymity.
That's now
You're
gone.
my daughter.
Yeah, everyone knows who we are now.
Okay. So, and we invited Rebecca and Saskia along because we realised a while ago, Albert and I, that, you know, we're two 50-something men talking about leadership and how to lead people in the workplace. And a key part of that workforce in any organisation is the young employees, is the people coming into the business. It's the new life, it's the future life of the organisation, the future leaders of the organisation. So we thought, why not get some real input from that end of the employee scale? So that's kind of where it came from. And we also, the reason we're doing it at night is because, you know, Albert and I are normally sitting up with our slippers on at this time of night, but these ladies just finished work. You know, completely different end of the scale to us. But look, let's launch straight in, because Leadership Detectives is all about finding out about clues towards great leadership and how people view great leaders. So my first question to you ladies, and I don't mind who answers first, is when you think about a leader in your business environment, when you're looking at leaders, what are you looking for in the leaders that you are employing you, or the leaders in your businesses?
So I would probably say that the kind of thing that I'm looking for in a leader is someone who leads by example. So someone who I aspire to be like, who gives me direction or gives the company direction, but leads from the front rather than dictating to the company what they should be doing and they're actually doing something completely differently. I think that builds a level of respect and makes me actually want to follow them. Okay.
So when you say leads by example, have you got an example of the kind of thing you'd expect them to do that matters?
So I mean, I think it's when somebody kind of, if they say the strategy is X, and I want you to do this as a part of the strategy, I think it's good when they also follow the same path. So if it's, for example, I want you to present yourself in a certain way, or I want you to work these hours, if they're also doing the same thing, It just makes you feel like we're a part of the same team.
Okay.
And there's this kind of a camaraderie about it. And I think also there is also increased respect when somebody says, I want you to do this task. Yes, it may be slightly below your pay grade or slightly below what I would even expect to do, but it's nice for me then to see them doing something as well that's quite comparable to that for whatever their level of leadership or role in the business is.
Yeah.
So kind of walk the talk, I would kind of put that down.
Yeah.
They say it, and then they live it. And
Yeah.
Saskia, how would you answer that question?
I would say for me, somebody that sets very clear objectives, like sort of firm-wide or business-wide objectives that really help you sort of like navigate what you're doing and gives you a clear idea of what we're trying to achieve in the next like 3 months, in the next 3 years, next 10 years. And also as well, somebody who takes on board feedback and actually wants to hear from the more junior people in the company. I'm quite fortunate in that, you know, we have very senior people come over from New York and they actually want to take the time out and sit down and have a catch up with analysts and associates and like actually take that feedback on board, which I think is obviously really important because in terms of retaining talent, if all your analysts and associates are really unhappy, then you're going to have extremely high turnover. But I think, yeah, those two things would be the main points for me.
Do you see those things happen very formally, Saskia, or are they informal, those kind of conversations?
So I think it probably depends on like the seniority. Obviously, someone super senior isn't going to take the time to do like the one-to-one coffee chats. So they would get like a group of people in a room and just want to hear from them. But I would say actually, yeah, very informally, which makes it more sort of approachable, and then sort of less senior people like you actually sometimes will have those sort of one-to-one coffee chats, which is extremely informal and it gives you an opportunity to really like take a step back and have a bit of a chat.
Okay.
So when we talk about feedback, do you go and seek feedback, or do you go and give feedback? Is it asked for, or do you or is it assumed that you're going to give it? How does that work, and what do you prefer as well?
I think it's a mixture of both from my perspective, because you don't want to be constantly nagging people for feedback. There are some times where I would feel it's really appropriate, like if I've done a demo, for example, or a client meeting with people I wouldn't normally work with, that's a time where I would feel the need to go out and actually reach out to them for feedback and see if they have any thoughts. But with your sort of like direct manager, it's the kind of thing that I would expect to be like a natural part of a one-to-one catch up when you're discussing what projects you've been working on and stuff.
Okay. And Bex, what about you? What about when it comes to feedback? What's your thoughts on it?
I just think it's really important to actually do a good job. I think if you're never given feedback, how do you know if you're doing anything half decent? And also, if you're getting feedback from your manager or other members of the team in the business or even the senior leadership, it just shows that they want to help you develop as an employee, and they want to help you improve, which just leads through to the motivational side of things as well, to make you actually want to do a good job for them and in a way please them. I think what's also quite nice is when management ask you for feedback on them. So when they come across with new ideas, or when things happen in the business, they actually ask you for your opinion as well, and it's a valued opinion. And I think there's different ways of doing it. Some people, I guess you could say bad leaders, would do it in a way where it's more of I'm just asking you just to ask you, but I really don't care, and I'm not going to implement anything that you actually do, that you say, and it's more just a box ticking exercise. Whereas other people listen and then they have a conversation about how they can implement that, or how they can then have a further conversation up the chain or in a wider team about your opinion and the feedback that you have to them.
Interesting. Go on back.
It's interesting actually, because our topic last week was all about feedback, right? And I think you're endorsing some of the things we talked of last time. But I know for you, Becca, I know that you're currently working at a very large establishment in the city, but previously you worked at a more local, smaller environment. any comments on that in terms of both the feedback and the engagement with the senior leaders?
So I definitely found I think I am also in a unique position where, because of COVID, I'm probably wouldn't be getting as much interaction with senior leaders and different members of the team in my new business as I probably would have if I was in the office 24/7 and so was everybody else.
Okay.
But I think access to leaders in a smaller business is much easier. But I also think that your opinions sometimes probably aren't as respected as much. Largely because when you have a small business which is led by one or two people, those two people are leading it for themselves and for the goal of improving the business in their direction. And the emphasis on the rest of the business is not, you're there to do a job, which is in the end goal is to kind of serve them. Whereas in a bigger business, it's much more surrounded, depending on whether it's a partnership or a shareholder business or whatever it may be, the goal is more surrounding as a group of people, which actually includes the employees being satisfied. And I think the leadership, the senior leaders in the business do engage more with the junior people, because the junior people probably have eyes on more things and are actually doing the processes that the senior leaders are implementing. So it's actually pretty more important to have those conversations. Whereas in a smaller industry, because you have such easy access, you're constantly having conversations, and you're probably going to be more likely to have, I definitely had a lot less relevant conversations. So I think your opinion probably gets a bit devalued sometimes because you're talking about rubbish, and you need to pick through that to kind of get the important bits.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. I get that.
And it sounds to me like the word that keeps coming into my mind listening to you both talk is about being valued. It sounds like, being asked, getting feedback on something you've done well is about being valued. It sounds like being asked your opinion is feeling valued. Is that, am I getting that right? Is that important to you, Saskia?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think like part of the reason it's so important is because the impact of the opposite way round. So like if somebody is actively taking credit for your work or not giving you like the credit you deserve for something, then that's extremely demotivating. So if like I'm really, really fortunate, like my manager is absolutely brilliant, and she would always give me like the credit that I deserve, but also give me constructive feedback at the same time. But if somebody came to her desk and said, hey, the event today was really cool, she would be like, oh yeah, Saskia organised that. Saskia, come over, talk about what you did to organise this event. So I think it's more like the impact of if you don't feel valued.
Okay, all right. So there's sorry, go on, Bex.
I was just saying, I think also when it comes to being valued and kind of giving credit where credit's due, it also makes your manager look good as well. Because if you're doing a good job, then it means that they're doing a good job by teaching you and educating you and supporting you, which makes them look good in the same way.
Oh, interesting. So not taking credit for your work and saying what a great job they're doing, by they become better or appear to be doing better because the way their team are performing.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. Get it. So what I've heard so far is that what you like in good leaders is they walk and talk the strategy. They've got a strategy, I guess, must be quite important as well. And they've got a clear vision of where they're going. I'm kind of putting words in your mouth. Sorry, go on, Saskia.
I said you would hope, yeah.
yeah, okay. The clear objectives one's interesting. I just want to drill into that just a little bit more, because when you say clear objectives, how much detail do you need? How much detail do you want? Is it the outcome, or is it, I need to know step by step by step how you want me to execute on this?
I think that's something that like filters down though, because I think if we're talking about a leader of a business, then I would say you would expect to see very broad objectives, and then like as it comes down to like chatting to your direct manager, you would expect to have a lot more detail in the objectives, and not a step-by-step guide by any means, but like, hey, this is the exact project that I want you to work on, you can run with that. but actually having that guidance from more senior leaders on the wider objectives, you can then see how what you're doing on a day-to-day basis actually fits into the firm's objectives and strategy.
Right.
And I think just to expand on that, in terms of how much information you want, I probably would also want to know the thought process behind the outcomes that they're wanting. So if they say we want to achieve this year, I'd be interested to know, why do you want to achieve that? Where's that number come from? Okay. Not in loads of detail, because they don't owe that to me, but in some kind of thought process that would also probably help in terms of what I'm doing to make sure that I can achieve that.
Yeah. So the content.
I know this is about leadership. I just want to think about your employer. So how much do those objectives of the organization matter to whether you want to work for that company or not?
Good question.
I mean, as long as we're not breaking any laws, as long as it's about growth. Okay. To me, that's what's important.
Growth for you.
Well, growth for the business, which would mean growth for me.
Okay.
So that's so is the ambition of the business important to you, as when you're looking at the business? Is the ambition of the business important?
Yeah, definitely. Ambition within reason, though. If they're saying that they want to go and achieve, I don't know, like a huge, like they want to triple in size in the next 6 months, that's not really realistic, and it's just going to lead to some probably not so great decisions. But if it's a realistic or within reason ambition, then yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Interesting. For me, the objectives wouldn't necessarily be something I thought about in great detail about the actual firm, but it would impact the role I would be applying for. So, if the firm's objectives is to expand their technology business by this amount, then I'm thinking obviously it would be a good idea to get onto the technology side of the business rather than the other side.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Get it. And the reason I asked the question about objectives actually is when I'm working with leaders, one of the things I spend a lot of time doing is telling them make sure your team know what good looks like, so they know that when they do something that they're doing the right thing, and they know what good is going to be like when they start a task. Is that important?
Yeah. So then they know what the expectations are.
Yeah.
That's actually a question that my company asks potential clients. What does good look like to you? And then we can see how we can match that.
Okay. That's interesting. That's a great sales question, by the way.
Yeah.
It is a great sales
Obviously, they've been listening to some kind of sales training then.
So, okay. Shall we move on to another question, another topic?
Yeah. I want to move to just a quick thought, Neil. We're talking here about leadership and your expectations of that. Do you guys ever have that conversation as peers in the workplace? Do you talk about what you expect from a leader? Do you talk about what you expect from a manager? And we'll come on to the difference between manager leader in a minute. But do you guys ever have that conversation in your company as peers?
I would say yes, because I think if you're, if one of your peers is in a different team and rolls up to someone completely different, then we would have a conversation like, hey, like, how do you structure like your one-to-one catch-ups? Like, I, would be looking for more career advice from my manager. Like, how do you go about doing that? Do you carve out a one-to-one once a month to talk specifically about career progression? Like, that's the conversation we would have around that, just to sort of better understand how people are making the most out of that sort of relationship.
Okay.
My answer is probably not as corporate as Saskia's. I think when your manager or leader's not doing what the expectations that you hold them to, that's when maybe discussions happen amongst colleagues. It's especially the senior leaders and the people who you probably hold to higher standards. If they're not matching those standards, that's when you probably discuss it amongst friends, or I've definitely discussed it with Saskia and just been like, do you do that in your company? And just, I think it's just trying to work out the system of what's the norm, I guess.
Okay, I love that phrase. I'm going to take that away. The expectations that you hold your manager to.
Yeah. But
that's fantastic.
Wouldn't that be a great question? Actually, I'm going to make a note of that, because wouldn't that be a great question for a manager when he sits down with his employees to say, what are your expectations of me?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be a great question to ask? Guys, anyone listening to this call, there's a golden nugget for you. Take it away. Ask your employees what their expectations are of you as a manager or a leader. Talking about managers and leaders then, should we go on to that topic?
Yeah, good topic.
So when you think of the word, or the managers in the workplace, leaders in the workplace, how do you see them as different? What's your perspective of the two roles?
I think that a manager is someone that's a lot more involved in your day-to-day. So you're having those sort of regular one-to-one catch-ups and talking like about specific details about the projects that you're working on. Whereas a leader has more of like a holistic overview, and like if you're having a conversation, it would again be like going back to the firm's overall like strategies and objectives, and not, this is what I'm working on today, I'm going to send an email. So that would probably be the difference for me. Not that I tell my manager every time I'm going to send an email. I should
no, but more tactical than strategic. What about you, Bex?
Yeah, I think it would be the same. I think that the managers are the people who manage you, and who, when you have any day-to-day questions or your day-to-day activities, they make sure you're on track and you're in line. But I feel like the managers almost work for the leaders in some ways, because the leaders are the ones who are leading the business, or who you look to kind of to follow, and your objectives are in line with theirs. And then the managers are kind of there to make sure that you're meeting all those objectives, and you're in line with the strategy, and that you're working towards the goal that the leaders are setting.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
So I'm trying to get some clarity in my head. Do you see a leader as a formally labeled role, or is a leader a persona? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So is a leader a formally labeled role?
I don't think it is. I think it's like a natural thing. And quite often leaders are sort of more, I guess, more senior mentors in a way. So it might be someone that's actually in your path of reporting line. That's the one. You can tell it's too late in the day for me. Not one's in your reporting line. It might be in a slightly different team. But as like a natural progression, like someone you maybe get on with, start having a few coffees with, are able to offer you like solid advice and provide you guidance. And sometimes it's actually helpful if that person isn't necessarily from the same team as you, because they might come in with a different perspective as well. So I think it's both, really.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think it's a combination of the two.
Right. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna ask a question that I get posed quite regularly when I'm mentoring executives, when I'm working with leadership teams. One of the things that they struggle with is, how do we keep our young, upcoming stars of the future, how do we keep them engaged? How do we keep them really interested in working here? Because, they worry that you're very fragile things, that they don't want to push you too hard, that you don't want to put too many hours in, that, they've got this perception of this whole snowflake thing. And I just want you to just tell me, is that true? What advice would you give to that board on how to keep you as employees? What would be the most important thing to you guys?
There's two very, very easy things. One, put Love Island on in the background. In the canteen. Done, no problems.
So no. I missed the second one, Saskia. What was the second one?
Avocado on toast in the canteen.
Okay.
But I'm okay with avocado on toast. That's good.
It's easy enough to do. No, on a serious note, I would say I think just making sure that feedback is given in a constructive way. Like I would like to think that we aren't like the snowflake generation and we're gonna like, run them on every time we have negative feedback. But I think it's just making sure that that's constructive. And also as well, like making a very diverse working environment. Like I think people, when you have like diversity in the workplace, I think people bounce off each other more, better ideas come out of it. And for me personally, like that's something that's really important. I think it's something that's also really important to our generation.
Okay.
Yeah, I think every generation will have different things that's important to them. So the best thing to do is to ask them, because I mean for me, it's not, it's for me, it's more about growth and progression and making me a part of your business and showing that you value me as an employee and that you want and that me being there is actually adding value to your business. Whereas for a different generation, the snowflake generation, it could be not working long hours, not having to work like a Friday, for example, or those 4-day weeks. I think it's very different for each generation. But I definitely don't think we will break if you make us work hard or give us lots of work or make us feel stressed. And actually, I think if anything, it's a good thing to do that, because otherwise you're going to have a bunch of idiots in the next 10-20 years with no life experience.
Okay.
Can I just build on that question, Neil? What so that's advice in terms of keeping you motivated and challenged. What advice would you give to leaders about developing the next leaders?
I think that's where mentoring comes in.
Okay.
I think companies that promote mentor schemes, where you work with somebody who's not in your team directly,
Mm-hmm.
you work with someone who's in a senior position who can mentor you, or I think that's where they can start teaching the younger generations how to be leaders in the future.
Okay.
And I think there's many ways you can do it. You can do it where you allocate mentors, or you can just do it where you encourage people to go out and speak to other people throughout the business, and maybe even a flatter structure rather than a hierarchical structure can encourage that kind of cross communication.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Useful. No, thank you.
I would add to that as well, like I would say letting people, like taking a step back and letting people like run with projects and sort of not hand-holding people or sort of micromanaging. I think if you sort of let people get on with stuff and let people run with the project, then it obviously gives them a real opportunity to come into their own. And so I think that would probably be quite important as well.
Okay.
So what would make you stay and love where you are? You know, I've got all these things about what leaders are going to do for you, but what would make you it special, make you stay and make you really passionate about what you're doing, versus switch you off and you'd end up leaving?
So Love Island.
Yeah, okay, got that.
for me, I come back feeling valued, like it's okay. and also just getting a lot of exposure and working on, you know, things that I feel are really beneficial in the business and are quite important things, rather than just being given, you know, spreadsheets to tie through. So that's, to me, that's actually more important than the specific industry or role that I'm doing. It's just the opportunity to work on complex things with, you know, with people like more senior people, and get that sort of exposure and experience.
Okay.
Yeah, and I also think kind of them investing in your development as well, because doing the same thing or doing mundane things can just really switch you off and it'd be boring, and then you can go out and look for other opportunities that are a bit more exciting and are going to challenge you. For me, it's definitely being in a place of business where I'm challenged on a daily basis, I'm pushed on a daily basis, and where I'm surrounded by other really intelligent individuals who in just by being around them will also push me and challenge me, and the people that I can learn from. I don't want to be the smartest person in the room, otherwise I think you just want to go be around other people.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. We've talked about you working in an environment, getting formal, informal conversation with senior members. Let's talk a little bit about hierarchy. How do you feel about hierarchy? Because you guys, you ladies sound very confident and very comfortable talking with senior members of the team, and that doesn't bother you. But how do you feel that goes up against having a hierarchical structure versus a flatter one?
I personally, so my company has a very, what I would call like a flat culture.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I really, really personally like about my company. And, you know, I think part of that is because sometimes the more junior people are sort of like the subject matter experts. So
mm-hmm.
more senior people do need to look to the more junior people for that really like detailed knowledge. But I think that's something that I personally really like, because it gives you an opportunity to actually have a voice, even if you're more junior. But I think, you know, that the line has to be drawn. Like, you can't have, you know, people running around like madmen. But
Yeah.
it's something that I personally really like about my company.
Okay.
Yeah, I think coming from a small, flat, very, very flat structured business, going into, and I've worked in other companies which have got a much more hierarchical structure, and it's been difficult to transition and remember that the directors and the board members don't care what I did at the weekend, and they don't care what I'm doing this evening. They just want to know facts about the business and my role. So when they come over, and I've had a couple of conversations with people come over and just thrown me, because there's been no pleasantries, it's just straight into what are you doing, how's it contributed to the business, and how are you bringing leads in? And they're really good questions, and questions I should have answers to, but it's just a little bit, it just knocks you sideways, especially at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Okay. Yeah.
It can be a bit tense.
So are you okay with that approach?
Yeah, I think it keeps you on your toes, and it makes you focus on what's important and actually what the goal is. They're there to be friendly and kind, but they're not your friends. And the business, you know, you're there to do work. They are paying you a salary. They do need something out of that.
I think that's just blown your snowflake theory out of the water.
Yeah.
So there was a word you used, Saskia, that I wanted to just explore. You said the culture of your business. I just want to, how important is the culture of the business to you? And well, I suppose, what does it mean and how important is it to you?
So I think that culture is like everything. I think it's absolutely imperative to the success of the business, because it's what, you know, two firms can match each other, like technology for technology, like resources for resources. But if you build a culture like so we have what I would call a coffee culture, where you can chat anyone in the business from any other team, be like, hey, do you want to grab a coffee? And you'll go for a coffee. And what that does is it, you know, creates that connectivity between different parts of the firm, and that obviously leads to collaboration. So it's important to me because it's enabled me to like build out my network, my professional network, and also have, you know, more resources. But I think it is like completely imperative to the like success of a firm as well. Success.
Yeah.
Okay. Becca, what would you say about culture? How important is that to you?
I think it's important for culture to kind of match your personality. So every culture is different, and everyone's gonna feel differently in different cultures. If you have somebody like Saskia said, if you have someone who's quite introverted, having senior leaders come into your desk and just asking you very direct questions isn't going to match them. But if that's the culture and you're very comfortable with that, like I think maybe Saskia and I would be, we'd be absolutely fine. But then if you're quite a type A person who goes into a culture that's very relaxed and come in late and you can do projects and the deadlines don't matter, then I think you're just going to clash and you're not going to stay and it's not going to work.
Right.
So I think culture is really, really important in terms of having a long career in a business, and to not to have a successful career, but definitely to have a longer career and to be at a business for a longer period of time.
So it would be a reason for leaving if the culture didn't match what you were looking for, and it would be a reason for joining if it was a culture you were looking for. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. That would, but again, it's something that you're not going to discover until you're in a business, because they can just tell you what their values are and they can tell you how they behave and what's important to them. But that could all be talk, and when you actually get in the door, it's all very different.
Okay.
I think you're right. The joining's going to be a lot more difficult, but once you're there and you're living it and breathing it every day, then that's a different thing. Okay.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, a lot of businesses, you know, don't really know what their culture is. If you ask them, they wouldn't know what it was, and so it's actually it sounds like that might be quite important for leaders to think about.
Well, it's a good point, Neil. Right? Who sets the culture?
Yeah.
Who do you feel sets the culture in an organization?
Well, I mean, it's set by HR, I think, to start with, how HR behaves and interacts with employees, and then it's also set from a top-down approach as well. I don't think it's a bottom-up. I think it's definitely the senior people in the company are setting it by either their actions or by what they say or the strategies in the business. and then that will feed down through all the managers and everyone else in the business.
Yeah.
But I also don't think you can ask a leader or a senior person in a company what your culture is, because they probably have absolutely no idea. I reckon, in my opinion, I think the senior people in businesses are probably the most out of touch with probably what the culture is.
Interesting.
So
they set it, but they're out of touch with it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Saskia, what would you say to that?
I think I agree that it's something that comes from the top down, and I think if you're in a meeting and it's the very senior people that are running that meeting and they say, hey guys, look, like because of COVID, we're not going for coffees with people. So, once a day, just ring someone from another part of the business and have a 5-minute chat. That then opens that door for you to do that. And for that person not to be like, why on earth is this freak calling me?
Yeah.
So I think, but then to me, that's leadership actively setting that culture, knowing what they're doing and what their desired outcome is. I think a good leader should have an understanding of what their firm's culture is, and it should be like it should be something that they are thinking about all the time.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, we're asking you questions, but my personal view on it is I think leaders set the culture. I think it starts with the boss, but the people underneath him or her can set an environment for you, working practices, way that people speak to each other, all of those things, and can influence that. So I think, for our listeners here, I think the leaders have a very strong part to play in the.
But how did you go about doing that, setting the culture? What kind of conversations happened within your businesses to even start that?
Well, actually, I'm just looking through the notes I made. Everything you've said here about what good leaders do, in your opinion, like being clear about what you want out of people, the way you give feedback, and how you value people and you recognize people, you help them grow. You give them growth progression, you give them mentoring, you create that environment. All of those things create a culture of, I really care about you and I want to grow you and I want to develop you because you're giving a lot to me, so I'm going to give a lot to you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think. What would you say, mate?
I think you're absolutely right. I think, and if you look at those behaviours and then come right back to what the lady said right at the start, walk the talk. Right, because somebody can say all of those things but not actually do it or mean it, and you'll see through it. Right, if it's plastic behavior, you'll see through it. So I think you're absolutely right. Take all of those things, put that into the right package, and then actually do what you say you're going to do consistently and properly and fairly. I think you've got it right.
So I think we'll start wrapping up there, shall I? So just what I made a note of here, just for everyone who's listening, and I'll put this in the show notes as well. So have a clear strategy and vision, walk the talk, clear objectives so people know what they're doing and clear on what good looks like. Feedback, good feedback, value feedback, but also growth feedback. Enable growth and progression and invest in developing. Mentoring is important. The culture is created by all of those, and Love Island and avocado on toast is really important as well.
I'm worried you're going to miss those two off.
No. There is something in that though, because it's understanding. Because if you've got all the ticker tapes going in the office, that's or you've got Bloomberg going, that's fine for some of the culture, but that might not be fine for everybody in the room. And if you're serving, bacon and eggs and a full English, that might be fine for some of the people, but it might not address what people your age need. So there is something in that, even though it sounds like a joke. Any final words, Albert?
Now, your input's been absolutely fantastic. The whole reason to have done this was to make sure we're catching a part of the working community that we've not had personal experience of managing ourselves and working with. I mean, sure, we had graduates and stuff working for us, but we're not talking about doing that in 2020 where you are right now. So thank you really much, a hell of a lot for your time, for your engagement. I know you're normally very shy ladies and you've done a great job of disguising it. So thank you very much for your approach. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, ladies. Thank you ever so much for joining. Your input's really, really valuable. I'm sure that there's a lot of people will get a lot out of this. To our listeners, please subscribe. Please give us the thumbs up. Please leave us comments and any feedback. But listen, fab to see you both. Thanks for joining. Albert, I'll catch up with you in the next episode.
Catch up with you later. Enjoy Love Island. Speak to you later.
Thanks, guys.
See you later.
Take care.